Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm joined by a panel of leading industry experts who are going to join me in debating the merits of enabling a truly cashless society. In a moment, I'll introduce you to my stellar cast of experts, but first, let me take a few minutes to set the scene for today's discussion. The UAE has been a long-term advocate for promoting the idea of a cashless society and the broader trend of digitalization in its banking sector. A recent poll by Standard Chartered found that 64% of people surveyed expect the UAE to become a fully cashless society by 2030. The study of 12,000 respondents was conducted in August this year, and it also found that 73% of UAE respondents believed COVID-19 had made them more positively disposed to the idea of online shopping and of mobile payments in general. So undoubtedly, the global COVID-19 pandemic has been a key factor in expediting the evolution towards becoming a truly cashless society. Another research study, this time from Nakuro in the UK, estimated that 6 million people in the UK alone downloaded a banking app for the first time as a result of the pandemic. It's fair to say that the pandemic has changed the face of banking and retail sectors. How can banks and businesses learn the valuable lessons of the pandemic and ensure that they're providing their customers with the services they want in the post-pandemic world? Before we begin today's discussion, let me introduce you to our panelists. First, let me introduce you to Shahbaz Khan, General Manager for the UAE Visa. Shahbaz, it's great to have you with us today. Perhaps you could start by very briefly introducing yourself to our viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, my name is Shahbaz. I lead the visa business for the UAE, and really excited to be here, Chris. Electronification of payments, digitization of the economy, and cashless is very, very close to our hearts. And I think this is something that's been really sped up because of the pandemic, and I'm really looking forward to how we can help the economy become cashless and realize UAE's dream of being one of those.
Next up, I'm delighted to introduce Nada Rizqala, Deputy General Manager from Credit Libanais. Nada, it's great to have you with us. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, Chris. Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to join you. I'm the Group Head of Risk Management and Strategy. Our major concern now is the digital transformation, and it's the first topic on our agenda. It started already some time back. However, this year with the COVID-19 and all the lockdowns that we have to do, plus all the revolution that took place in Lebanon and all the events, I think it accelerated the process 360 degrees, and we can see now all banks accelerating the online, the electronic, and the resistance from the clients now has completely changed, because they have now to be able to use their cashless money. So I think that all the society also have changed, even in Lebanon, in the UAE, as we gather, especially with the COVID, as you said, it has provided a lot of acceleration. Not any business now is not accelerating the digital transformation and trying to sell their products online. So I think despite this, we have all a great opportunity to reduce the cash society and go more into cashless society.
So next up, we have the CEO of Mondia Pay, Simon Rahman. Simon, welcome to today's discussion. Please feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chris. So I'm Simon Rahman. Nice to meet you all. And I'm the CEO of Mondia Pay. So Mondia Pay is a direct carrier billing company that offers reach. We call it reach to our partners and merchants. And Mondia Pay is a subsidiary of the Mondia Group. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with that, with Mondia. But Mondia offers digital entertainment ecosystems to mostly mobile operators today. And Mondia Pay is its payment division that gives them the access to the end users of those mobile operators through our platform. So we reach about 1.4 billion people today through all the connections that we have, and we help what we call the merchants. These are big entertainment services so far, like Spotify, Deezer, Amazon Prime, etc. We help them monetize the operator's user base. So that's in a nutshell what we do.
Perfect. Thank you, Simon. So let me take this opportunity to remind our viewers that we will be concluding today's session with a question and answer session. So if any questions pop into your head during today's broadcast, as I'm sure they will, you can submit them to me using the chat function in your browser, and we'll try to get as many of those as possible at the end. Right, now that we're all acquainted, let's dive into our discussion in earnest. As I said in my introductory remarks, consumers seem to be overwhelmingly in favor of going cashless. But evolving to a cashless society will also benefit economies, with the move to cashless transactions here in Dubai potentially providing a $2.2 billion uptick to the Dubai economy. My first question for our panelists is, why does the UAE want to become a cashless society? And Shabazz, I'll come to you first.
Sure. So I think the number you quoted, Chris, is in fact from a visa study, I believe. Look, I think it's not very obvious, but I think cash has costs and inefficiencies, right? Dealing with cash, it costs money. There are risks of dealing with cash thefts. All kinds of issues that come with it. All of the savings that you just referred to basically come from streamlining all of those operations, right? And UAE has been on this journey quite long. They recognize the need to go cashless a while ago, and I think that decision has really helped the UAE really weather the pandemic in the best possible way. In fact, what we see now is that the domestic spends in UAE are almost at pre-COVID levels. So there's a real strong shift of consumers from cash to cashless, and which is proven to be a safe way to pay. I think there is a few reasons why going cashless is top of agenda. The first one is obviously economic recovery, and we talked about that. For many businesses during the COVID period, going digital, while it was a forced move, has been the only way to remain afloat, and it's been an important consideration for them to continue to operate. We talked about the skyrocketing move towards e-commerce. I think that going cashless has actually helped fuel that growth. As you can imagine, a lot of the e-commerce companies have moved to almost like a touchless operation, so touchless deliveries, keeping in mind the safety of the drivers as well as of the consumers, the preparation of the UAE economy in going cashless has actually helped them to actually move to that touchless format, right? So it's actually helped the e-commerce growth within the marketplace. The other thing that cashless has really helped businesses is with fast movement of money. So consumers, governments, businesses, they expect secure, immediate access to funds digitally, and we have seen a growing demand for peer-to-peer payments across the region. Visa has an offering called Visa Direct, where you can make real-time push payments. And also, if you think about small businesses, especially the gig economy operators, right? I mean, your average Uber driver or your average Kareem driver, going cashless has actually helped them get access to their earnings on a real-time basis, which has been really the need of the hour for us. I think one not so obvious benefit of going cashless is that whenever you make a digital payment, it generates a data footprint, right? So, it really enables businesses to understand the consumer behavior. It really helps them tailor their offering and drives data-driven decision making. So, look, we really applaud UAE's journey towards cashless. And I think it's going to really position UAE as a digital-first nation, and we would really like to help in whatever we can, to achieve that dream.
Thanks, Shabazz. Simon, does that chime with what you're experiencing here in the UAE?
Yes, very much. So Shabazz really gave a very comprehensive answer already. But like you mentioned, Shabazz, I think there's benefits for the entire. I mean, from a consumer to business to the economy as a whole, we see a lot of benefits, and I think, like you said, data, it makes everything more efficient. I think from an economic perspective, it provides transparency to the government. Also, I think it's probably an important reason for why the UAE is moving into that direction. I think it helps governments shape policies, define new policies. It reduces also a lot of crime. I think Shabazz mentioned that too. I think the whole money laundering part, the black money, I think you can avoid in this case, or reduce at least. So it reduces corruption as a whole. The benefits of e-commerce, I think it creates such a new ecosystem that the companies can operate, I think, with much lower costs. People don't need to have physical stores anymore. They can, it really helps create more efficiency for the end. Even for the end user, will get better value for money because it somehow trickles through to the end user. So I think, overall, big benefits for sure. And on the data side, yes, you become more exposed, but I think it probably is for the better as the world is getting increasingly more, dangerous,
Yeah. Thanks, Simon. So Nada, you're coming to us from Beirut this afternoon. Hello to you. What have your experiences been? I know you were saying to me that you've visited the UAE on a number of occasions. How have you seen the UAE's evolution to becoming a cashless society?
I'm first. I really follow up on the UAE because I have worked there also 8 years, and I'm really very impressed with the way that they are approaching it. And Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum put it actually in his vision 2021, where he wanted Dubai and the UAE. They wanted to be at the Golden Jubilee, the prime country in the world. And it is part of their reputation and of their vision. And I think that initially all of this strategy is eyeing basically for monetary purposes, and because it will improve the investors when they see that when they come, they visit the UAE, the facilitation of the all the technology, the connections, because all of the cashless society will require a lot of good technology, of a platform, of infrastructure, and it will create basically great confidence for investors to come and eye the UAE, which is part, if you want, of the diversification. It will benefit all the consumer, it will benefit the businesses, and it will benefit most of all the economy. Everybody is able to make savings. Of course, the COVID-19 came and accelerated this process in all the countries. As Shabazz and Simon properly described, that now the consumer find it much easier to buy. They get also discounts from companies when they are buying, so they are taking part of the advantage of the efficiency of the companies that are turning into the digital, reduce on the administrative expense. However, we have to take also into mind that the infrastructure for companies will become also maybe more challenging with respect to all the security issues, the proper infrastructure that has to be done. And I think that a lot of companies are trying to help in this. Like yesterday, I was attending something that one of the large Microsoft, for instance, and they are willing like to go all in the startups and help them with setting the infrastructure. I know Visa, Master also are doing the same with helping the companies to turn into the digital transformation. So I think this will be a major boost for the economy. Consumer, apparently, I read some statistic, and they can save up to $200 million in their spending. Businesses could achieve something like $1.5 billion from time savings on those platforms. And the government could also save nearly 500 million like economic growth. And there is also a lot of saving on the printing of cash. The security, the cash, you have to secure it, you have to transport it, you have to make insurance on the cash transportation. So I think that there is a lot of potential. On the other hand, I think that there will be a little bit, there will stay some cash in the society. We cannot like become 100% cashless society, whether in the UAE or different, because you still have some businesses or consumer that are unbanked. Maybe we can tackle this in the second question.
Sure. Thanks,
And
Norbert.
I think, Chris, an important aspect is the whole health aspect, right? So, I mean, I think maybe Shabazz touched on it briefly, but of course, it's much more hygienic to be cashless. You know?
Absolutely.
I always tell my kids, don't touch coins, don't touch this. Even before COVID, you feel like somehow money itself is dirty if you hold it in your hand, you know. So I feel that has definitely another big advantage as well.
For the life of me, I never thought that would be a tagline that we'd use to digitize payments, but you know what? It's a whole new reality. So,
emphasis maybe also on the part of money laundering and the tracking of the transactions. This is also very important because really with this you can track all the data, the spending. It is for money laundering, and it also for the future of artificial intelligence, where you can see the consumer taste, how it's the evolution, what they like, what they don't like, and how they spend, the spending patterns. So I think this data will become something which is very fortunate to be able to use it at all the levels, whether for money laundering, whether for selling, for marketing, and for trending for the artificial intelligence and the future of the digital. On the other hand, there is something which we need also to tackle. This will be a challenge, I think, the data governance and the data security. That here we'll have to start thinking about it.
For sure, we will come on to data governance and data security in a little while, Nada. So hold that thought, and we will come back to it. I just wanted to say, really, the pace of change here, particularly in the UAE, is really impressive. I'm actually on my second stint in the Emirates. So I was here originally from 2014 to 2016, left, and then I came back in January this year, just snuck under the wire before COVID hit, thankfully. So and even the difference I've noticed in the way I can pay for things here, there's almost nowhere where I need cash anymore in the UAE. So I mean, I guess over the last 2 or 3 years or whatever, operators, tech firms and the UAE government as well have been ironing out all of the potential stumbling blocks. But what might some of those stumbling blocks have been in getting to where we are today, Shabazz?
Yeah, so I think there are a few really stubborn pockets of cash that used to sort of really be top of mind for us. One of them has been tackled. So cash on delivery when you're shopping online, I think, was one of those stubborn pockets of cash that we've tackled, and I think consumers feel safer now to pay with card or prepay for their order when they're ordering online, and that's been done. I think one of the biggest ones I feel is an opportunity, a stumbling block, is peer-to-peer payments. So if I were to pay unbanked, as Simone mentioned before, right? So if you have an unbanked consumer, person who is like a gardener who come and do your garden, right? Mm-hmm. How do I pay? I have to withdraw cash, because it probably doesn't have a bank account. So I think peer-to-peer payments is something that we're really keen to get going in the UAE. I think that's sort of the last mile for us. And I know that there is, regulators are looking at it as well. So that's important. It will also help, like I said, the gig economy is growing rapidly. It will also help gig economy workers get access to their earnings in real time, which is, is really important in this time. Mm-hmm. From a small merchant perspective, so while the shift to e-commerce and digital has been so rapid, a lot of the large businesses have managed to, with the kind of investments they have managed to make that move quite seamlessly. I think some of the small businesses have been left behind. So there has to be a concerted effort, and I think Visa is doing our part where we're trying to get these small businesses go online, to be able to first of all do business online, and then be able to accept seamless payments. So there's a couple of things that we've done in this space. So Visa has globally launched an initiative called Where You Shop Matters. And this is all about supporting small local businesses get back on their feet in the wake of the recovery. We've also, most recently, I think in fact last week, we announced a pilot in the UAE where, cost of the acceptance device sometimes becomes a hurdle for merchants to take on acceptance. we're now launching a pilot where you can use your phone as an acceptance device. So tap to phone is something that's going to become commonplace in the market. And then there's other innovations like pay by link. So, if a person comes to your door, delivers something that you've ordered online, while you might not have made a prepayment while you've ordered the thing, but once you're happy with what you're getting, the person can send you a link and you can pay by link. I think so. So all of those innovations are sort of, there to support small businesses catch up. And I think that's sort of where our focus needs to be to really drive towards cashless.
Great. Thanks very much, Shahbaz. Simone, I just wanted to come to you and just pick up on something that Shahbaz mentioned, which was the peer-to-peer payment option. One of the things that strikes me about this cashless society, the only negative that I can really think of at the minute is that if I go out for dinner and I pay with a card, as I do 99% of the time, I inevitably don't have cash with me to tip the serving staff. Now you can, at the minute, your option is just to add on, 10% or whatever to the bill, but then you're never really sure that the worker actually gets it. I was on a trip to China a few years ago, and each of the servers in the restaurant there had their own little individual QR code that when you wanted to tip them at the end of the day or at the end of the meal, you literally just scan the QR code, ping them whatever it was, 10 or 21, and jobs are good. And what do we have to go through here to get to that, to make that possible here?
It's a good question, huh? Because I've never seen the QR code tipping service here actually in the UAE. I'm not sure it exists even. I mean, what we do through mobile payments, to be honest, this tipping does exist. So, and you can really tip from minute amounts, 0 point something dirhams, to all the way up to 500 dirhams. I think now we have a cap here in the UAE of about 500 dirhams per transaction through the mobile phone payment system. But of course, it's going to be difficult to. So you can do that. You can tip. You can donate to charities this way, etc. That already exists today through your phone. But to enable this for individuals would actually be an interesting concept to develop.
I guess it requires the person that you're trying to tip. So, sorry, I guess it
exactly.
Yeah.
So the technology exists, right?
Yeah.
The QR code technology exists, so right, we can, I mean, you see in India, for example, there is QR codes where you can pay a person scanning the QR code at a corner shop. So that exists. I think what we need is some regulatory help to be able to do that.
Okay. And Nada, what's your perspective from Lebanon? Are you seeing any sort of initiatives like that? Is micropayments featuring much in your economy?
Yes, but the problem here is a little bit different, because here you have the networking issues, and you have also the issue. I think also it must be common in other places, like for small merchants and for the cost of the transaction itself. Because every time you are spending, the cost of the transaction is going to be deducted from what is being paid to the merchant. So that's why the merchants do not always feel like they want to be getting paid in cards. They prefer to get their full amount, especially when there are thin margins and other competition now in the market, especially with the e-commerce, where you can now compare the same product with other products directly online, and you can see the price in one place to the other. So I think this, because sometimes also you give them based on volumes, the banks, and will provide them like with special commissions or reduced commissions based off the volume of transactions that they are doing on their POS.
Right.
Another one is also like you have very small merchants and in remote areas, for instance, in Lebanon, where you will not find like small shops and things like that. You will not find it, first because of the commission, and because also that the merchant has to go through the KYC process when they are opening in banks, and you have a lot of frauds potentially happening on POS with the merchants. So that's why we also have to watch out the POS utilization at the merchants, because sometimes they use it as a cash dispenser and fraudulent transactions. So this is, if you want, some of the ideas. And the problem of the network. In some remote places, the network, you have always like disconnections, and this creates like hassles within the utilization of the POS. I don't think maybe this same problem arrives in the UAE because of the great network and infrastructure, but in remote countries where the network is not and the communication is not that much developed, this could also it has to be taken into consideration. Plus the culture, the consumer, the culture of the consumer that who really is bankable. You have here both merchant and consumer that both want to have the bankable issue that we have to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And I think, Chris, coming back to the small merchants, because you emphasize on small merchants, I think this is actually exactly the beauty of what Mondia does offer, for example, in terms of mobile payments, because it really enables these small companies, even any mom and pop store that Nada was referring to transact with the world, actually. And this is really what we give them access to. Of course, what it does lead in terms of stumbling blocks, these guys then need to build up quite a lot of new know-how and technical know-how to be able to do the integrations with companies like us. But and I think the most important one is the marketing know-how. So they need to really be able to understand the markets that they want to target. Then they need to do the effective advertising and targeting. But once they really figure that out and do those investments, which shouldn't be crazy investments for them, then they have a huge new customer base to target. And they can really, and all of them have mobile phones. So, then it's really, it becomes an interesting play, even an opportunity for small startups to get visibility out there. And I think that's an opportunity and a stumbling block at the same time for these small merchants. And I think, I'm not sure if you're going to touch on the payments later, the waiting to receive money. I saw you something, because that's still a big issue on our side, to be honest, because even in the UAE, if we want to focus on UAE, we have I think it's about 80% prepaid market. And when you have a prepaid market in terms of SIM cards, that means you have a lot of bad debt. So that means the operator takes quite a while to reconcile and see how much bad debt we have. I think on average 6-7% in the UAE. And then you only get paid sometimes 1, 2, 3 months after the transaction, and even the consumer has actually downloaded the piece of whatever he bought. And so the merchants do have quite a while to wait. And this is something that needs to change. Whilst the big merchants, so let's say I'll give you an example. We work with the likes of Google or Amazon Prime. And these guys have because they're so large and the operators are actually small compared to an Amazon, they dictate the terms and they say, listen, I don't care. I don't care about your bad debt. I don't care. You pay me within 15 days. For example, Apple does that. And Amazon, I think, asks 30 days. So they actually have no regard for that. So it really depends on the size of the merchant that dictates also the amount of time that it takes for you to receive the money.
Who's calling the shots? Yeah. All right. Thanks, Simon.
So can I just sorry, go on, Nada.
The collection issue, I think, is a serious issue that needs to be considered, because also this is affecting their cash flows, and that's why small merchants and even large merchants, especially now with the economic crisis that's happening worldwide, they want their cash flows to be available and without delays and more acceleration on this part. Plus, they need more administration. If you want, maybe they will save on something, but on the other hand, they have to reconcile, check what has been paid, get the money from the banks, etc. So I think this is something that has to be improved with respect to the cashless payment.
Yeah. Shabazz, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just a bit of a different view in terms of the point that one of the points that Nada raised around the commission or cost of acceptance, right? So I think in the UAE right now, I think the mindset of the merchants actually shifting from the cost of acceptance to actually the value of acceptance. And the way, so, I mean, we did a study recently during the COVID period, and we basically realized that 70% of the consumers we spoke to are prepared to walk away from a shop if they don't accept a digital payment.
Yeah.
Right. So at that point in time, I think the real decision is, do you want to? So it's a matter of losing business for a merchant who's not offering a digital ways of paying, right? So I think, and that's where the conversation is going right now, and all of these cheaper formats of tap to phone kind of payment methods just make it easier for smaller merchants to get on board.
Yeah, I agree.
Great. So just to come back to something that Nada mentioned earlier, which is security around these payments. So that's something we can address. As with all the facets of the digitalization process, the move to becoming a cashless society will mean that cybersecurity is of paramount importance, obviously. With millions, even billions of endpoint devices in play, how do you ensure that all those virtual dirhams pinging around are secure? That is the question. So Shabazz, if I come to you first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, look, the very basis of a payment network is it's built on trust, right? I mean, you should be able to trust to use the network, and you should be able to trust to put your card on file. So we take security extremely seriously. I think it's an industry-wide collective effort to make sure that the industry remains secure. We definitely invest a lot of time and effort and money into making sure that our network is secure. There's a few things that, in terms of technology, in terms of security advances that have happened in the recent past that towards this. So, when you're shopping online, so Visa has a program called Visa Secure. So when you're shopping online, we use certain industry standards to make sure that all of the transactions that go through your card when you put a card on a website are secured. So it's dictated by industry body called EMV Co. So just to ensure that the consumers have the trust to use a electronic form of payment online. There's also a resurgence of contactless payments in the UAE. So everywhere you go now, you can either use your Apple Pay or Samsung Pay, or even just tap your card onto a point-of-sale machine. So even those transactions are tokenized. So whenever you put your card into Apple Pay, tokenization is a technology that we follow, where it actually removes all of the card information from that credential. And even if you lose your handset, you actually won't lose your card details, because the data that's on the phone is actually meaningless, cannot be connected back to the card. So it's secure on the network. So a lot of these advances in the industry are sort of, lots of effort and money invested in it. I think the biggest part of security as well is consumer education, right? So there is, as you can see, a lot of Nada would know that I'm sure the banking industry invests significant amounts of effort and money in educating consumers, because there are some basic do's and don'ts. It's like, how if you deal with cash, right? You wouldn't be foolish with cash. So it's the same thing. You have a payment credential, you would want to follow some basic rules for your banking information, for your payment information. So that's another effort that we work very closely with the industry in terms of education, consumers, educating merchants on how to deal with payments safely and securely.
Great. And Simone, if I come to you, obviously what consumers want, obviously they want things to be secure, but what they want is ease of use, right? They don't want to have to have their user experience impacted by sort of extraneous security procedures. How do you balance that demand for sort of instant service with security?
Good question. So I think, first of all, you need to distinguish. So mobile payments, the business that we're in is really microtransactions. So we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dirhams a week, a month, a day. So it depends on which market, etc. So first of all, those numbers, and since most or many of the emerging markets that we're dealing with are prepaid, the consumer is pretty quickly aware. Once his credit is out, he said, "Oh, what happened?" He can check, and if there's any fraud, at least he will lose a few dirhams, and then he will detect quite fast that something happened. That's number one. What we have in mobile payments is, I think the beauty is that the conversion rate of converting to a paying user is somewhere around 10 times higher than credit card conversion, because in credit card you really have to enter this information. It takes a lot of effort, whilst in mobile, we have something called the one-click or sometimes two-click payments, where sometimes you just click on a banner, I like it, subscribe, and you're done. And it gets charged to your phone bill. And I would say that's the beauty of mobile payments, is the ease of use and the quick conversion. And hence we see massive. So just to give you a statistic, so we as Mondia Pay, we do about 900 million transactions a month on our platform today. And it's quite a large amount of transactions every day. Of course, all micro transactions, but what we do, and what becomes more and more important is the security aspect. So we are now together with the operators, we agree on a balanced flow, something that makes it still easy to consume, but have some sort of a security. And what's quite common also in the credit card industry, I believe, is we do a two-factor authentication flow. So it's still convenient. We do an OTP, you get your one-time password sent to your phone, and then you just enter that OTP. And that honestly eliminates, I would say, a majority, or if not almost all, of the fraud. Of course, there's still fraud even with OTP. And these hackers are out there, and they're finding new ways every day. To be honest, these are the most innovative guys in the world, I think, are those guys trying to find ways to steal money. But I would say that we've really seen a big shift from those, we call them the one-click flow, where you really don't even enter anything except your mobile number, to having at least some sort of a security feature like an OTP flow that we add. So a second step. And of course, what we do as Mondia, we also have third-party software that runs behind the scenes that really tries to detect, I would say, unusual behavior, malicious behavior, where you see that people enter the OTP extremely fast, because there's some technologies, by the way, they just they pre-fill everything for you, so you don't even, within milliseconds. That's also not true. That means you actually didn't physically type in that code yourself. Somebody did it for you through some bot, or I don't know what they developed. And that is something that we have software that we also run that in the background that analyzes this very quick, and we can very quickly either switch off that merchant that is doing this, or we switch off the advertising channel that they use to recruit the end consumer. So so I think it's a combination of how you advertise. So if you go through Google, Facebook, these are the trusted sources, for example, or the big sources. And then of course you need to have some security features like the OTP flow, and of course some third-party software, in a nutshell, that runs behind the scenes, that really tracks and gives us everyday analytics that we watch and make sure that we act on if there's something funny happening.
Great, thanks, Simon. Nada, from a bank's perspective, obviously when you're talking about physical cash, banks are used to being thought of as some of the most secure places in the entire world. How do you ensure that you continue that reputation for security as you evolve into sort of digitalized economies and cashless payments?
As you say, for the cash, it's quite expensive to handle the cash for banks, because you have the cost of cash, you have the cost of the transportation, you have to keep on filling the ATMs also with cash, and you have a very large network in Lebanon. You have to fill in all the regions more than 67 branches, and you have to keep security, and you have to keep insurance. Of course, we are now we're providing lower commissions for customers that are using their cards, to encourage them to use their cashless way of paying. And this has to be, in fact, a change in a full society culture, because basically if the consumer uses and the merchant doesn't, so the flow will not be able to be closed. If we go back to the security, we in all the banks, you have a special division which is responsible, which is independent from the IT, and it reports basically to the risk management. We have a team of security engineers, and of course Shibaz knows very well, because Visa imposes on banks to be PCI DSS compliant, and this is a challenging issue, because you have to review all the flow of the data that is going from one system to the other, because basically payments will not happen only on through one system. There will be a lot of interfaces and communication between different systems. So you have to ensure that all of this flow, this infrastructure is quite strong, and we keep on educating, we keep on training our people, and with our alliance with our partners also, we also get trained, because basically technology is always moving, and we need to be always ahead, especially with the cybercrime, fraudulent transactions taking place, because we know that the hackers are always more educated than everybody, and then they always find ways for hacking. So here this is something, and you have also other challenges, because you have this major flow of data, and then you have to keep all of this data and try to use it, and you have to maintain also the privacy of the customers that are using. Here, because we have also a branch in Cyprus and in Europe, and even in Lebanon, the central bank imposed the GDPR regulations. So we had also to work a lot on this in order to be able to ensure that all the flow of data is also covered, not only for cards, but for every flow of data between the systems and any communication that is taking place with the customers. But I think there is a lot of chance now, and the potential keeps on increasing for the cashless society in all the world. And of course, I don't see that in some countries this will continue, will be like 100%. It will take some time for evolution. And I think that the poorer countries or the less developed countries will have more challenge into moving into cashless societies, because people still want to see this, and the way the banking evolution of the merchants, how can they be bankable or not bankable, consumers bankable or not bankable, especially with the stringent regulations that you have on money laundering and on compliance. Plus, I think that the government has to put a lot of we need also a framework, a regulatory framework, which has also to be done by the government. You must have regulations and laws that protect the cashless society. So I think this also has to be a full equilibrium for the whole economy to improve this.
Thanks, Nada. I feel like we could stay on that topic for a little while longer, but we'll have to try and move things along a little bit just to time is on the wing. So let's move on to our final discussion area for today, which is how banks are going to interact with these other partners in the ecosystem going forward. So if the UAE is to become a genuinely cashless society, there will need to be a concerted effort between the key players. How will tech providers interact with traditional payment providers, for example, banks? And can we expect banks to try and acquire tech providers to bring them in-house, or will they work in partnership with each other? Are banks investing sufficiently in research and development to develop their own digital payment services? So Nada, I'm going to stay with you for that question. Are banks investing in sufficiently, in your opinion?
I think that the budget for banks on research and development will not be usually as big as, for instance, other companies. And, of course, the banks, in my opinion, will need to partner with the new with startups, with mobile companies, with Visa, with other startups or fintech having which are developing like new systems of payment. I think both of them will need each other, in fact, because with all what's happening now with the governance, with the security, with all of these issues, you need governance at the end of the day. You need board members, you need governance, you have procedures, you need policies, and all of these startups, when you feel, yesterday I was coaching with Veritech in Lebanon. We have Veritech, which is encouraging the startups. So I was coaching someone, and they were telling me about their application, and I was really very shocked by the way I was asking questions related to security and related to the infrastructure, related to like basic points, and I saw that okay, they were not as much covered as like a banker you would think, or a secure the business, like Visa, for instance, they know how to think, and I'm sure that also Simon, he has the same concerns in his application for payment. So I think that banks are more rigid, let's say, in their business models and their development, and they will not be as much as they claim, as creative as like when they are going with someone who is specializing in this particular payment methodologies. So I think that will be a benefit for both. The fintech will take advantage of the expertise and the compliance and the governance, and banks will take the advantage of being with the startups or with the brilliant ideas on technology, and they can team up. Of course, you have to decide on what to choose, what is best. This becomes the challenge on with which fintech to go and with which technology company, payment company you would go.
Thank you very much. Simon, Mondia Pay, I guess your key relationships really are going to be with the telcos, with the tech providers. What are your priorities sort of going forward with the way that you interact with the rest of the financial world?
To be honest, we're already starting to integrate also with wallets, for example. Some of these e-wallets are owned by banks. So I think you see a lot of the banks creating their own wallets. So to be honest, we haven't, I think in the UAE, we haven't found the real, besides Apple Pay, Google Pay, etc., the wallets are not yet very commonly used. So we haven't integrated into any of the UAE wallets yet. But for example, in Africa, we integrated to M-Pesa. I'm sure you all heard of M-Pesa, but M-Pesa is a huge success story, and people are paying almost everything through M-Pesa wallet now. And at least some of them in Kenya, for example, it's heavily used as probably the #1 country in the world. So we have a shift towards integrating wallets for sure. And to answer that question in general, I think the banks have no option but to start to either acquire or partner or something. Or I mean, I don't know if you have started using digital banks, but I'm a customer of N26 in Germany. It's a digital bank. I've just opened an account, by the way, with a really interesting bank called Ila Bank in Bahrain. So they're a subsidiary of ABC Bank, which is a traditional bank, and they've created their own digital bank called Ila. I mean, I must say, amazing, seamless process. You can open multiple currency accounts at a click of a button. I mean, it's really, the banks really need to get their act together, in my opinion, and not in order not to become obsolete, because these digital banks are either going to eat them alive or they create their own digital banks. That's my view. I think even Abu Dhabi now, I just announced a few weeks ago the creation of a digital bank, and I think this is a good example because FGB Bank, I think, gave their license to that digital bank in return for a 10% stake in the digital bank. So FGB used their banking license, because again, even the digital banks are going to be heavily regulated, and this is, I think, where the banks know how they need to capitalize on it now before it becomes too late. So they should really use that know-how, the experience, the regulation that they've been through, and enable and empower those innovative startups, fintech companies, etc., to make them shine, whether it's through an acquisition or equity swap or whatever it is. There's so many different methods, but I think the banks have to do that. In fact, we even have some operators now, coming back to our business, the mobile operators are also starting to dabble in this space. So M-Pesa is partially owned by Vodafone. So Vodafone is a mobile operator, it's not a bank. So I mean, so the banks really need to be on their toes, to be honest.
Yeah, I was going to say you've got Orange Bank in West Africa as well, kicking off, and they'll be expanding across Middle East and North Africa as well. So yeah, lots of non-traditional banks trying to offer out banking services.
Now, for fintech, the startups are considered as part of our competition. Before, they were not. Like, banks were considering themselves as not being the only competitor in payment methodologies. But now, as Simon is saying rightfully, if banks want to survive and be in the future landscape and continue with their consumer, they have no choice but to become more digital, and I think to partner with interesting payment technologies. I think this will be the otherwise all banks that are not moving in this direction, I think, will disappear in a few years.
Yeah. Shabazz, does that chime with your experience in the region? I mean, I know you must be working extremely closely with all the banks in the UAE and across the region.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Visa operates one of the largest networks in the world, and even sort of when we sort of thought about this, so we want a whole bunch of operators to come onto our network and collaborate and create, right? So we see a lot of banks obviously waking up to the opportunity. There is a lot of examples of either banks creating their like a standalone digital only play. I mean, ENBD and Liv Bank is an example. Simone mentioned about the Abu Dhabi announcement as well. And at the same time, they're also reinventing their old traditional banking, right? So there's a lot of banks who have taken on massive digitization projects that, because one of the risks, and in fact, they talked about speed of movement. I think one of the things that slows some of the traditional banks down is the legacy infrastructure. So a lot of the banks have invested in actually modernizing that infrastructure so that they can keep up and perhaps collaborate with a lot of these fintech players. So there's absolutely a need to do that. A lot of the banks are actually thinking about themselves as marketplaces now, and they are open to other smaller players who offer specialized services to come and work with them and offer those specialized services to the consumers. I think what the banks can learn from some of the smaller fintechs is how to create absolutely delightful customer experiences. I think that's what the fintechs excel in. And I think what the fintechs can learn from the banks is the whole piece where Nada sort of mentioned around compliance, regulation, how to be manage things securely, and so there is real collaboration to be had. I mean, we've embarked on Visa has a very, very active fintech outreach programs ourselves. And so we work with a lot of the fintechs in the region, trying to help them come up the curve. And once we are sort of in a position where we can comfortably take them to some of our larger players, I think that sort of adds a layer of trust to for the larger banks to collaborate with them. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's required. It's happening already in the region. You can see with some of the fintech valuations that's a reality, where there is an expectation that a lot of them will scale and in partnership with some of the larger banks to get a significant market share.
Yeah, I think that's another webinar in its own right, is how startups are contributing to the whole evolution of this ecosystem. Well, time is flying by, ladies and gents. So I've seen that we've had quite a few questions coming in over the last 45 minutes or so. So let me put a couple of those questions to you as we move on to our Q&A session. The first one that I'm going to ask is, let's see who's prepared to put down a firm answer to this. What are the timescales for becoming a truly cashless society? First of all, here in the UAE, and then in the wider Middle East region. So guys, pick a number, and I will come to Simon first.
All right, thanks for this. Well, I don't know which, I did look at some stats. So someone, I don't know, it could have been Visa even, I don't know, Shabazz. They said that 75% or 73% out of all transactions in 5 years from now are going to be cashless in the UAE. So this is something. But to be honest, I think the MENA region is also on a good track, because first of all, it's a very young and tech-savvy population. So I think this is a key. I think we have the demographic is in favor of going cashless. You have a huge smartphone adoption. So everyone has these smart technology devices. So I think it really depends on a market by market, to be honest. You have to drill down, and each market will have its own peculiarities. But I think the MENA region as a whole, I mean, UAE has over 90% smartphone penetration. So alone that will enable you to do all these wallets, Apple Pay, Google Pay. So that's already cashless, So I think the MENA region will be one of the fastest regions to adopt these new technologies. If you compare to Europe, I mean, here it's an aging population. People have less than one child per, I don't know what statistic is exactly, but it's an overall aging population. So I feel like that's going to take a little bit longer to do that transition, especially more conservative countries like Germany, for example, where I'm originally from. So yeah, I think the MENA region is on a good track in general, with a young tech-savvy population, high smartphone penetration, and I think it will take, in my opinion, if I have to give years, I would say the majority of transactions are going to be cashless in, I would say, 3 to 5 years would be my guess in most of the more developed MENA region countries.
Perfect. We'll follow up with you in 3 to 5 years just to confirm that. Just to come back to what you were saying about more traditional physical financial countries like Germany. I was one of the things I was remembering while I was preparing for this webinar was I was in Frankfurt. Can only have been 2 years ago, I think. It's, world financial capital, sort of European mega hub for finance. And just booked to go out to dinner, and before we left, our host said to us, "Have you checked whether they take credit cards?" And I was like, "No, obviously not." And she was like, "No, but seriously, you need to check, because not all restaurants will." And I guess from spending so much time here in the UAE, where you just take it as read, and to some extent in the UK a little bit as well, I was really shocked that there are still large numbers of particularly businesses in the entertainment industry, like restaurants, that are still purely cash based. So it's easy to take it for granted here in the UAE, I think.
Correct.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, I think I've been cashless for a couple of years now, so and surprisingly, this is not the first time I've been asked this question. So the conference, maybe I think it was an ITP conference, I'm not sure, and I was on stage and somebody asked me the same question about how. And I replied in the same way, saying I've been cashless for a couple of years, and I sort of asked the audience for a show of hands on how many people were actually, and I sort of said, look, I just leave with this. I don't carry my wallet with me. The moderator, in fact, asked the audience for a show of hands as to how many people haven't got any cash on them. And to our equal surprise, I think nearly 70% of people raised their hands. So, so look, I think, like I said, in sort of, when you think about cashless, I think you got to think about the different levels within the society. So, sort of the affluent, upper affluent kind of folks are already, I'm assuming, cashless, have been cashless for the longest period of time. I think where we need to really have a concerted effort on is the lower segment of the economy, socioeconomic structure, right? So I think that's where cash prevails, and I think with all of the things that we just talked about, I think that's where the focus needs to be, and it will probably get there in the next few years.
Okay, thank you. Nada, just coming to you on the back of what Shabazz just said there. Maybe you can give us a perspective of when you think Lebanon will take a few more steps down the road to becoming a cashless society.
Well, I think in Lebanon it will be more challenging now with the financial crisis that is taking place because of the several regulations actually that are taking place, where they, especially now when we had the default of the government, and people are not anymore trusting the transactions to be done without seeing their cash. So you see that people are coming more to withdraw cash from banks, and they are going to buy physical cash, dollars, and especially now because there is a lot of printing of money because of the severe inflation that is taking place. The central bank now has put new regulations in order to ask the clients to bring back the cash to the banks and to limit the withdrawal of cash. And last week, the central bank, the governor announced that they are going to create something which is the digital currency. And people were not very welcoming at the beginning on this, and we were seeing a lot of negative reactions. And all of this is basically due to the lack of confidence in the central bank, especially after the default of the government and all of this, the financial crisis that is happening. But we are, from a bank's perspective, we are moving very fast on the online banking. Now we see, for instance, that there is an upward trend which is accelerated by the COVID and several closures that we have to do. Our business with respect to visa distribution in Lebanon increased. Our online banking also increased utilization tremendously. The people that were resistant initially to use have now completely changed their patterns. Some banks are not putting any more cash on their counters. So if you come and you want to withdraw cash, they will tell you have to go to the ATM. So
right.
All the society is moving towards trying to do it. But you will have, as Shibaz said, you have some remote places and the lower economic sectors will have to strive for this. So I think it will be a challenge for all the countries that underdeveloped or where you have more poorer sectors, if you want, in the economy.
Yeah,
I think Chris honestly is a very important point. Actually, I think that the trust and this confidence issue in the system is probably key to go cashless. Because the moment you have a little bit of doubt, all you want is to have all the cash, and not if you can't access your money whenever you want, whatever, and withdraw or use or whatever, then all the trust is lost. And I think it's actually the basis to going cashless. And if you can't establish this as a country with your framework, with your rules, with central bank governance, etc., I think then you're going to really struggle to go cashless.
On the other hand, we have, for instance, we have launched now during hardly 2 weeks ago. We are launching the payment, the municipality payments, everything through cards. We developed this, and we teamed up with the municipalities, with the government, and we are starting, because for us, we believe as the bankers and or the major society people believe that transforming the government into an electronic government is an opportunity to reduce the corruption, to finish actually from the corruption and from all the layers.
So I've got another couple of quick questions just to race through. Simon, one for you regarding Mondia Pay. You recently signed a deal with Huawei as their tech partner for the Middle East and Africa. What does this mean in terms of offering a choice of payment methods to end users, and why did Huawei select Mondia Pay?
Okay, so yes, so we signed, just to clarify this, so we signed a distribution deal with Huawei for their app store. It's called the App Gallery. Mm-hmm. I think so Huawei is very aggressive, especially Africa and Middle East are some of their key markets for Huawei. So in some of the markets, their smartphone penetration is sometimes over 50%. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, Iraq, for example, they have almost 50 or over 50% market share in terms of smartphones are Huawei smartphones. Wow. So what they've created is their own ecosystem and their own app store, and they've appointed Mondia as their distribution company for this. We will start with carrier billing because it's really the most, I would say, the most widely used payment system in the Middle East and Africa, because everyone has one, if not two, phones, and so it's over 100% penetration normally for mobile phones. And the reason they selected us, honestly, is because of the reach and the good relations that we have with the mobile operators. So we cover many countries in Middle East and Africa. We are a trusted partner of the operators, and we can, once we integrate one time with Huawei, we can instantly launch them in all the countries that we are already connected to with operators. So what's the beauty about Mondia Pay is you integrate once, and then we can immediately open those countries that we're already connected to. And I think this was the main reason why they selected us as a preferred distribution partner. And using Mondia Pay to charge for the content that they sell through the App Store for Huawei.
Sure. All right. Thank you, Simon. So our final question today for our panelists is, I'm quite interested to see how you answer this one. Can we think of any reasons why we might want to retain cash and why we wouldn't want to go cashless? So Shahbaz,
tipping.
Yeah.
There's a solution for that, Simon. I'll need to talk to you about that. I absolutely see no reason, to be honest. I think, like I said, our household has been cashless for a while. I think see no reason why cash should be around. Apparently it's not hygienic anymore, apparently. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm very much the same as you, Shahbaz. I don't carry cash anymore, and I'm struggling to think of an actual reason why you would want one. On the other hand, my girlfriend always has cash and never cards, so between us we've got everything covered. I guess that means for the time being she can take care of the tips, right? So Simon, any insights into that? Are there reasons that we would keep cash?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more like your girlfriend, Chris. So I always have cash with me.
Okay.
Of course, and honestly, mostly for the tipping reason is actually one of my main reasons. If I go to valet, if I go to wherever, the convenience of just giving whatever 20, 30 dirhams here and there is important for me to have in my pocket. It feels strange if I don't have cash in my pocket. Maybe I'm just old school in that sense. I don't know, but I feel like until there's a solution where you can really tip, for example, directly to that person, not to a restaurant or whatever, to that individual, I think I'll always have cash in my pocket, in my opinion. So I think to become completely cashless is difficult, but I think there will always be a minute, even if it's a single-digit percentage of transactions or volume in a country going with cash. I think you will never completely get rid of the cash. That's my view. But there's definitely a huge shift to going cashless as a whole.
Okay, that seems like a good place to leave our discussions for today. So much for us all to digest after a really interesting debate. Let me close by thanking our expert panelists for sharing their insights with us today. Shabazz, Simon, Nada, thank you all very much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Let me also thank our viewers for tuning in to today's broadcast. We hope to see you all next time. Until then, it's goodbye from all of us here at the ITP Tech team. See you next time.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.